I am Kalissa Holdcraft, and I am the Keys Fellow in Urban Policy Development, and I did my internship this summer at the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C. So the U.S. Conference of Mayors, it's not really a conference as much as it is an association. They know that the name is bad. The Governors Association actually switched their name. They used to be the conference. But the U.S. Conference of Mayors is the official nonpartisan organization for mayors of cities with populations greater than 30,000. The role of the U.S. Conference of Mayors is to promote the development of national and urban suburban policy, strengthen federal and city relationships, focus federal policy to urban needs, provide mayors with leadership tools, and create a forum for mayors to share ideas. And in this picture, it's on your far left side, that's Tom Cochran, who is the current CEO. He's the third CEO of the Conference of Mayors. They stay for a very long time. Next to him is Antonio Villagrosa, who is the mayor of LA. He was the outgoing president this term. Next to him is Michael Nutter of Philadelphia, who is the current president. And then next to him is Scott Smith of Mesa, Arizona. I was able to meet all of them this summer. And so I'm not going to go through all of these, but the U.S. Conference of Mayors has a lot of things that they do. They have these standing committees that mayors are chaired. They chair each committee, and all of the committees have staff people behind them. I worked with all of the staff this summer. My site mentor is a senior advisor to the conference, and two of the things that he worked on and he had me work a lot on were, in bold, the Council for the New American City and Metro Economies, and then the Metro Exports and Ports Task Force. This is only some of them. They have a lot of things that they do, so it is a pretty widespread organization. So my internships, projects, and tasks. I did a lot this summer. I wasn't really focused on one specific thing, but it gave me a lot of information. So one of the things I did this summer is I authored a resolution for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. What the Conference of Mayors does is they have two annual meetings, one during the winter and one during the summer. During the summer, they vote on this big, thick packet of resolutions that they, as mayors, affirm. It's their highest form of lawmaking, kind of. When they pass those resolutions, they then go on to Congress and the Senate to try and lobby so they could possibly create actual legislation out of those. So I had the opportunity this summer to author a resolution about energy conservation, and that was actually passed by the conference. And then during my last week of working at the Conference of Mayors, I went and lobbied Congressman Loebsack about my resolution, which was really cool. I also did a lot of research into policy initiatives. Because I worked for a senior advisor, he didn't always have one specific task. He came into work a lot of the time saying, Kalissa, I heard this on the radio, I want you to research it. Because he is very much a brainstormer for the conference, and so that really helped me kind of learn how to brainstorm and figure out policy things. I also created these short metro strategy case studies about 3 different cities. Cities are doing really innovative things, and to highlight that, I created these little handouts, and they had all these facts and graphs. And I have some if you'd like to see them later. They gave me a lot. But those were handed out at the summer conference to the mayors in those different task force and committee meetings. I also created a comprehensive informational foldout explaining important findings from the Metro Exports and Ports January Task Force meeting. My boss is the main staff person for the Metro Exports and Ports Task Force. It's kind of this new big thing for the conference, and they're very focused on infrastructure this year. It's something that Michael Nutter really wanted to focus on during his presidency, and so ports and the switch from ports to highway infrastructure is a big thing for the mayors, and it's something that they're working a lot on. So I watched hours and hours and hours of YouTube videos from the task force, and it was very interesting. And I never thought I would say that about Metro Ports and Exports, but I know lots of facts about it now. And then the final thing that I really got to do, and it was really fun, was I got to staff the task force meetings at the summer conference in Orlando, Florida. The winter meeting each year for the conference is held in Washington, D.C., and it's cold and not as fun. But during the summer, they go to a different city each year, and they have their annual conference. During the day, we go to meetings and sit in on plenary sessions, and then at night the city hosts and we get to go out and kind of have a big party with all the mayors. It's really fun. Up on top, that is myself and one of the other interns for the conference. She goes to UCLA. Behind us, you can't really see it, but that's Vice President Joe Biden. So I got to see him speak this summer. He's a big friend to the Conference of Mayors. And down here, that is myself and my other intern, and that is with the mayor of Des Moines, Frank County. He's actually who I wrote the resolution for, because the mayors will ask the conference to write a resolution, then we write it, and then they submit it. But it is actually mine, I promise. So I kind of talked about this a little bit, but some more project information. My resolution was titled "The Urgency to Address Climate Protection." You may not realize this, but the mayor of Des Moines is very big into sustainability. He has done a very good job at doing comprehensive sustainability practices in Des Moines. And one of the things that he was worried about is climate protection. And so essentially what my resolution does is it calls on Congress to regulate carbon emissions to a higher standard, create an energy efficiency and conservation trust fund similar to the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, and permanently extend renewable energy tax credits. Some other publication research that I did for those specific metro strategies, I talked about Akron, Ohio, and it has, for a smaller city in Ohio, it has a very, very high rate of foreign direct investment. And so I kind of did a little overview about how they went about going to attract those foreign companies. And then the task force meeting on metro ports and exports that I mentioned earlier. And then I did those other metro strategy reports on Des Moines and their sustainability effort in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which has this kind of, it's very interesting, and I hope that more information comes out about it, but it has a public health care plan for its public employees that has maintained a level premium and has not cost more, and it's actually starting to save money for them. So it's a pretty interesting program. So what I learned about the policy process. Not only did I start writing resolutions, and that was in my first week. My boss called me up on my first Thursday at work and he said, "I need you to write a resolution." And I said, "Okay, we'll see how that goes." But it ended up being just fine. I did a lot of political strategy discussions with my boss. He would have me come in when he would be on conference calls with people, and afterwards we would kind of break down how the conference call went, and he would talk to me about the different issues and different players in that. It taught me a lot about bipartisan political efforts. Being a political science major at this college, I learned a lot about the different parties, and we see a lot of the animosity, but the mayors are a little different. They're very bipartisan. They love working together. They joke about the different Republicans and Democrats, but they really are focused on their cities and getting things done for their cities, so there's not really a lot of bickering. I did a lot of specific research. Like I said, my boss is a brainstormer professionally, and so I did a lot of research on vocational schools, energy policy, welfare, financial education, and the ports and exports. Some other things I learned how to adapt to new situations. As James mentioned earlier, he's from a smaller city, or smaller town. I'm also from a smaller town, and this is a smaller town, and then I went to DC, and it was my first time being in a giant city. I also lived with Republican Southerners from Mississippi, and they all worked on the Hill, and so it was interesting kind of mixing with them. It was really fun. I learned how to enhance my brainstorming skills, and I also learned how to interact with mayors and other governmental office holders. Not only did a lot of mayors attend the conference, but I also met the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan. I met a few undersecretaries for trade and finance, and there were a lot of other random senators and congressmen kind of just milling throughout the conference. Some impacts I got from my internship. Academically, I definitely got to experience the political process firsthand, which was very exciting for me. I've always been excited about policy and looking at policy research, so I actually got to do it, which was great. It expanded my policy interests. As I mentioned earlier, I never thought I would care about ports and exports, but now I will seek out news stories about it, which is weird. It also enhanced my writing skills for clarity and conciseness. I learned that when I was writing my little strategy reports, mayors will only read about the first page and the first half of the page, so I had to get all the information in there to make them maybe want to read the rest of it, or at least hand it off to an aide, which my boss helped a lot with. Personal impact, I made amazing connections with mayors, U.S. Conference of Mayors staff members, as well as a lot of congressional interns that I lived with and I met throughout them. I met a lot of mayors, and it's not uncommon for me for when I meet a new person, they tell me where they're from, I will make a comment about their mayor, because I've met a lot of them. Whether or not I like them, depends, who knows. I introduced myself to the mayor of Davenport. He didn't seem that excited, but that's okay. I met a lot of U.S. Conference of Mayors staff members, and I was offered to, he asked me to come back next summer, so we'll see if that happens. But I cannot thank my site mentor enough. He actually is a Cornell grad, so he knows how great Cornell is, and he loved talking to me about Cornell, and we would always go out and tell people how we were the better Cornell. Some future impact. It assisted me in identifying my areas of interest and expanded those areas. I'm still very interested in policy and the legal aspects of government regulation, and I dealt with that a lot this summer. It fostered my love of policy research, because that's all I did, and it sparked an interest in local governments. I had never lived in a city that had a mayor that did a lot of things, because I've always been from very small towns, and it was very interesting to me to see that mayors really do have a very big role in what happens in cities and all of these different policies, and they're doing really innovative things, and they really are kind of the laboratories for a lot of policy. And I know that people think of states that way, but cities are even more so, because they're doing things on a smaller level, but they're kind of crazy for the most part. And that's myself with Dave Losack on the day that I had to lobby him. And I walked in and he goes, "So I hear you're supposed to be convincing me of something." And he seemed very interested in it, so that's good. But I would like to give a special thanks to my site mentor, Dave Gatton, who could not make it here from DC, my advising professor, David Yamanishi, and the fellows, donors, and honors of Charles Keyes. So thank you.